Welcome back, America. We're here with our friend, Senator Tom Cotton. Senator Cotton, welcome. Some quick questions for you, Senator. There's this piece in the Wall Street Journal, I'm sure you read it, of text messages and emails sent by Sinwar. He's the chief genocidal maniac of Hamas. And he basically says, civilian casualties, we expect that. In fact, it hurts the Israelis more than it hurts us, so we want to keep it up and so forth. I mean, do Joe Biden and Blinken understand what fools they are, that they're playing right into this guy's hands and to Iran's hands? And what the hell is it going to take to shake some sense into these people?
Well, Mark, no, they don't understand what fools they are because they'd stop being so foolish if they did. Again, just so your readers appreciate this, the Wall Street Journal, in a remarkable bit of reporting, got its hands on text messages and other online messages from Sinwar, as you say, the genocidal head of Hamas inside of Gaza, not someone sitting up in a luxury condo in Qatar, but who's in charge of military operations in Gaza to include the October 7th atrocity. And he says time and time again that they want more civilian casualties inside of Gaza because the more Gazans who are killed, the more pressure Israel faces. It just goes to show what a bloodthirsty savage he and other Hamas leaders are. And what does Joe Biden do? He puts pressure on Israel, exactly what Sinwar wants to happen when he says, let's have more civilian casualties. Why do you think those hostages were being held inside of residential homes, in residential neighborhoods, when Israel rescued them on Saturday? Because Sinwar specifically wants more Gazans to be killed in this war.
And the media are happy to oblige. CNN, ABC, CBS, all the Sunday shows, happy to oblige. The Israelis go in there. They lose a fantastic commander, unfortunately. And there's a big firefight. They tape it so the whole world can see. They didn't kill 300 civilians. They get 4 of their people out. And what's the story in the American media all day Sunday? Was it really worth it? I mean, the number of people who died. Like they're reading from the transcript that CARE gives them, which is a Hamas front group, or that Sinwar gives them. It's got to be so damn frustrating to the Israelis to see this happen in the United States, no?
Yeah, of course it must be, Mark. I mean, I don't think even Americans and American troops can understand how frustrating it might be because Israel, as always, is singled out and held to a different standard than every other nation in the world. Again, you have the leader of Hamas who specifically wants to inflict civilian casualties on his own people. You have the Israeli Defense Forces who go out of their way over and above the demands of the law of land warfare to avoid those casualties. And what does Joe Biden and Tony Blinken do? What does the United Nations do? They condemn Israel. They say, well, they should have just left 4 of their own people to rot as Hamas hostages rather than kill 200 Gazan fighters for Hamas.
Why are we even negotiating with Hamas like this is a legitimate organization that's going to keep its word? They laugh at us. Why are we negotiating with these people?
Well, we shouldn't be negotiating, and if anybody thought we should, again, they should review those messages that the Wall Street Journal published today from Yahya Sinwar. That goes to show the exact reason why we shouldn't be negotiating with these people. They want their own people to die at the hands of Israeli Defense Forces. They're willing to use tactics to intentionally inflict civilian casualties on their own people. So, of course, they don't care about the lives of these hostages. All they're trying to do is survive. And the policy of the Israeli government is what Joe Biden should have done from the very beginning, which is to say, we want all the hostages back and we want unconditional surrender. And we're not going to stop until then. And if Joe Biden had backed Israel to the hilt from the very beginning, this war would probably be over and all the hostages would have been recovered.
Do you think the only way to stop this, I guess, is the election, right?
Regrettably, I think that's the case. I mean, fortunately, the election is only 5 months away. We got another 10 weeks after that. But I think Hamas, and more importantly, perhaps, its patron in Iran recognizes that if we return Donald Trump to the White House, there's going to be a major, major shift in American policy, that we're going to back Israel to the hilt, we're going to back our Arab friends, and we're going to stand up to Iran and its terror network throughout the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. Is this administration still withholding, do you know, are they even telling you, armaments that Israel needs?
I don't think there's been any change in that, Mark. They're still withholding large bombs that are needed. These are not just large bombs that Israel wants because they're big and they go boom loud. They need them to penetrate the deep, buried tunnel system that Hamas has been allowed to build for 17 years, where people like Sinwar are currently hiding, probably surrounded by hostages. Yet this administration, because it wants to placate a small but vocal pro-Hamas minority in its own party, is withholding those weapons, which the vast pro-Israel majority of the American people support delivery for.
I'm going to ask you a personal question, Senator. I don't think I've ever asked you this. You're not Jewish. You're not Israeli. You are a combat veteran. You're from a state that probably has 7 Jews. I'm just kidding. And yet this is near and dear to your heart. Can you tell us why?
Well, Mark, Israel is our closest ally in the world. We have a shared Judeo-Christian heritage. We have not just religious commonalities, but we have cultural and political ties. There are strong strategic bonds that support not just Israel's interest in the Middle East, but our interests in the Middle East in this alliance. Those ties are all the kinds of things that make for fantastic allies. Again, not all of our allies have those. We don't share common religions with them all. We don't necessarily have the same political systems with them all. But Israel and the United States share all of those bonds. And Israel is a completely reliable ally. It is strong. It has a strong military, and it's willing to use it to defend itself and our interests in the region. We couldn't ask for anything more in a great ally. We should always back Israel to the hilt, as you saw with President Trump. When we do back Israel to the hilt, you don't get war, you don't get terror, you get peace breaking out, in part because other nations in the region, like, say, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, which signed peace agreements with Israel under President Trump, recognize that they've got strong, reliable partners in America and in Israel. So those are just a few of the reasons why I think the U.S.-Israel alliance is so vital to our national interest, to our prosperity, our freedom, and our security.
You know, Senator Cotton, Joe Biden likes to say he's defending democracy and Trump's trying to destroy it. Can you tell me one way, just one, where Joe Biden's defending democracy in the United States, or even practicing it for that matter?
No, it's very hard to identify one way. I can tell you one obvious way in which he's not, which is trying to imprison his political opponent before the election. If New York State were a foreign country, Mark, the United States would have already sanctioned it for trying to imprison political opponents and rig an election. You know, this is the kind of stuff you expect to see in Pakistan and Brazil, not in the United States of America.
We have with us a great patriot, a combat veteran, Senator Tom Cotton. As a matter of fact, Senator Cotton, I look at the list of potential vice presidential choices, and I know J.D. Vance served in the military. I don't know about Burgum and so forth, but I do know you did, and it seems to me that's a very positive thing. In other words, somebody who not only knows about the military from a sort of think tank perspective or a Senate perspective, but from getting dirt under their fingernails, you know?
Well, we certainly got some dirt under our fingernails back in the day, Mark. I'll say that I suspect the only person who knows who's on the VP shortlist is Donald Trump himself. I'm confident when he's ready, he'll make a good choice for himself, for the ticket, for the party, and most importantly for the country. To your broader point, I do think that it's very important that. Sorry about that, Mark.
It's all right. We know you have kids and a wife. That's the way it goes. Go right ahead.
I have a 9-year-old son who is tampering around with the screen in the truck, which he shouldn't be doing.
That's funny.
I do think it's important to have more veterans in our public life. That's one of the reasons why, for several years now, I've had my Veterans to Victory program to try to encourage more veterans, especially from my generation, to run for Congress and increasingly to run for the Senate as well. I think we benefit from that veterans perspective in the elected office.
So tell everybody, how many kids do you have? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I've got two young sons, Mark, who are very sweet and peaceful and kind and loving when they are sound asleep. But my older boy, My 9-year-old is playing Little League Baseball, and he's got his championship coming up on Thursday night.
Oh,
so we
boy.
just got done with his final practice before the season started.
Well, that's very kind of you to take time to speak to us. You're probably getting an earful about that. And your other child?
7 years old. So he's a little bit younger. He's not quite up to that age yet of playing high-stakes baseball. But we have a lot of fun together when they're not getting in trouble while Led's on the radio.
Listen, it's okay. It's actually quite funny because I remember when my kids were young, and this would happen all the time. But anyway, Senator, let me say one other thing to you. I want the American people to know something about you. You're a very decent man. You're a very principled man. You're a family man. You try and balance your family life with the political life. I know all this about you. And you're very kind. And so, on the other hand, you know who the enemy is. Who the enemies are. And you also, when necessary, you'll put your brass knuckles on. So there is that, too. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for everything you're doing in the United States Senate, everything you're doing over immigration, everything you're doing on spending, everything you're doing with our national security and our Defense Department and the State of Israel. You're not one of these flashy guys who does more talk than action. You're an action-oriented guy. So I want to thank you, Senator, very, very much.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that a lot. Coming from you, it means a lot.
All right, Senator Cotton. Go get him some ice cream or something. That's what I would do. All right, be well.
He just forfeited his right to ice cream.
Gee, Daddy's not happy. All right, be well. God bless.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, be well.